Okay, we're going to take a look at a map here that's a redraw in the 1500s, and then it's redrawn again later in the 1700s. And they keep the exact same map, and it's one that's passed around. It's one of these maps was found in with pirates in their collection of them, and who knows who they got it from, but it's kind of telltale whenever you look at the map here. But there's a lot of neat information you can get out of maps. Now, I've done a few on maps now, but I try to spread them out because I think if I do too many of them back to back, then that screws everything up. Quite often, we use maps to show you where we're talking about, and also just to give you a visual of going like these people were over here, and the people came over here, and then here's the name of it, and things like that. So interesting things found on this map here are, well, some of them are quite evident once you start looking at it, but this is a map of Africa, northern Africa, and you can see how they still at this point have not drawn the Mediterranean even correct. Although they do have projections out here, that point up and point out, and harbors that cut in somewhat, right? But they haven't drawn it correct to the way that we know that it is now. And it's all drawn on that one parallel that's right there, and like the 37th. And so they don't quite have it figured out. But the neat thing I want to show you about that, I guess, is that across this delta here, there's some 66 different cities that are there, and probably about 12 to 15 of them no longer exist anymore. And you have to zoom in real good to get the names of these, but this is what archaeologists use and underwater treasure hunter finders, because sometimes it'll tell you that the ship went down off the coast of so and so, or the name of this city, and the name of that city no longer exists, or perhaps used to be named something totally different, and they can find out where it is, and oh, there it is. So we're going to try to go right off that point and see if we can't find anything. And they'll use the radar and things like that to try to find it. But there's a lot of these cities here that are actually sunken and lost to time, and this isn't the way the coastline looked. I mean, if it was, then most of these cities would be lost to time, because it scallops in and convexes quite a bit through here. But odd things you can find out about these maps. I don't know why they do it. So just a few mentions here always they have in maps. But you see like this right here. This is written, by the way, in Latin, and it is believed to have been, of course, a Spanish map from that. Now this right here they have the funny F is an S, and so it's Osites, and then down here they have Osites Major. Now I don't know why they do this on maps, but they have Osites my colon nor. So that's Osites Minor. Well, if you look, if you didn't put that colon in there and you started the N there, you could have fit that in there. There's really no reason to have done that. Or I've got a better idea, cartographer. Start your O about right here, and then it just fits right in there. There's no reason to do things like that, but you see it in maps. You also see this strange thing whenever they try to tell you that this is the Libya exterior, this whole area here. They put Lib, Ya, exterior. Kind of an odd thing. Sorry, got a bit of a tickle in my throat. But also here they show you like Egypt, which is hard to see through all this mess. But Egypt was Aegypt. It's always spelled that way, like the Aegean Sea, which strangely has a correlation. You wonder about the Aegean and the Aegyptus. And I've got to do a vid coming up on Egyptus in the ancient Greeks, because there is a definite mention, and that's where the ideal of it comes from. They never called themselves Egypt. They called the area right down here that was the fertile plain Kemet, but yet they never really called themselves the people of Kemet, because they really owned from here down to here. Conspicuous things on this map, though, that Egypt, it's Aegypt, like just thrown out, right? Egyptus, and then they just put us over here, Tus, It's it's odd that they do that, but they just want to cover the area. In a modern time, we would kind of sweep the word across it, really spaced out correctly, right through, not running over something. But anyhow, it also shows the cataracts and the Nile and its bends extremely accurately, and the cataracts that are there. In fact, even now they have the dam there and the giant lakes that's there, but it shows the bends here all running through correctly of each of the cataracts. Interesting effect, though, they show you right here that there's an island in the center of it that's quite huge, and how it does a loop around it, a little closer to the left, a little farther to the right, okay? And then it comes down, and then it splits again and runs through, and then rejoins again, and then hits and runs into the delta here, right? I don't think it does this anymore, does it? Huh? I'm not sure we have total evidence that it ever had this weird look to it there, but they definitely say this is the way it is. And you can see every red spot you see on here that kind of looks like a little flame, doesn't it? Well, those are actually evidence of a city. And these are places that they have trade developed in. These are trade cities. And you can see the majority of them around, on the coast, of course, but you can also see where they run down. And here's the secret trans-Saharan route that runs down below. Now, a few interesting things here. They show a chameleon quite correct right here in doing his little walk out on a limb that he does. They show these rivers, but if you remember the maps from not too long before this, now again, this is supposed to be a 1300s map that was made on goat skin and vellum, uh, which is animal skins, and then taken to paper here in a 1500s map. In a minute, I'll show you the 1700s version of it also. But if you remember the older map, when it got up to here and got up to Moreau, they basically didn't show any of this, and they showed that the Nile ran over here and ran into these rivers, dot, 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 and then ran up here and ran into the Atlas Mountains, and it says Atlantis right there, right? Which is kind of strange and very telling as to where the location of Atlantis probably was, or the belief of it and the concepts of it. But now they've got it to where it runs way on down. And of course, this is a little way before the Dr. Livingston, I presume, situation, but they show it running all the way down. They show it running through the mountains here and then continuing up. And really, if they ran off the edge of the map here, right off the edge of the map would be Lake Victoria and so on, which is the essence of the Nile. So it makes you put into question the idea that they didn't know anywhere up the Nile until the Livingston and all this type of thing that we're kind of told in school. Interesting enough, right next to here, they show you that there's the troglodytes that live right here. And if we look up the coast, you can, which would be like Ethiopia now. And if we look right here, they tell you that it's Egypt's ichthyophagi. Well, ichthyes is fish, and phagi, this is all written in Latin, and phagi is to eat, right? So these are the fish eaters, or fishermen, or they're saying everybody that lived on the other side of these mountains here were basically living off fishermen type stuff, and they would probably trade on these little routes you see right in between here for grains and food, and now we can have fish sandwich. But so it's kind of neat. Also, it runs into this one trade route here, and this says Lycopodiates, which is weird. That means Whitefoot. But then again, there's like Blackfoot Indians and American strange things. Weird words all through here, and I wish I could really blow this up and make it better, but the picture doesn't have enough pixelity. If I blow it up more than this, it really gets just a blur. Another thing I want to point out here about the Delta area that they show is that the land of Judea, there were no J's before the 1300s, and so whenever they captured this map, there's only a couple of J's on this whole map. Any other place, it shows the IE or IU starting of it, right? And if we look, here's Ieudea. And if you remember my story on Chronus and Chronus' son, Elluded, and they named the land after him Ieudea, and it shows you that even during this time, they don't call it Judea. There are no Jews, that type of situation. I don't know if we can even get that in over there real well, but Ieudea. Okay. So across here you can see it's all squared off and blockheaded, and then it cuts the edges over here. And this would have been the area of, Fez is right over here, and Morocco and things show up here, but it doesn't really show it on the map. It's just inconspicuously taken, not really, it's not shown. And another oddity here is they show you that Libya only cuts to right here, which it actually has a little more land than it ever did with this. This is its land back then. And then here's this land called Marmarica. Marmarica. Well, now Mar and Mer and Mer all have to do with water in the ocean, as in Mary or maritime, right? Mariculturing things, that's in the ocean. So Marmarica, that's ocean water people. And kind of neat, the people off this coast here were called Marmaridae, which would be a genus type of a mermaid. And they said the women here swam like fishes and dove all around. And is this where kind of the idea of this mermaid thing all comes from? Well, let's not go into that. But it shows you here that they have these wadis or oases all through here that run all the way down into the sub-Saharan African area. Now, of course, this looks like it's got something to do with those Phoenicians, because in all the maps where they don't want you to go, they show you a monster, right? And here they show you Loco Feron Plana. This basically means the feral animals here, the local live, are crazy. Loca, they're crazy. Wild creatures are there. Ooh, watch out, wild creatures. Now this is Cyrene, right? Cyrene, Cyrenica. And here's a dragon. Now the dragon conspicuously has a stripe down the side of his body, quite like chameleons often do. But he's got a lizard tongue, not breathing fire, no real horns on him. He only has front feet. He has a long curly tail, which looks very much like a chameleon type thing, and he's got little wings on though, and they're saying, "Are there be dragons there?" Now, telltale things that you find in maps like this too sometimes. You can find the origin of the map by the drawings that are here, and this is a very Baroque type idea, so it shows you it's not from the 1700s in any way, shape, or form. And it has a motif that looks very, I don't know what you'd say, Anglo-European, Spaniard cross, and that's indeed where the map comes from. They show you down here an ostrich done quite well, right? Like they know what's going on. I mean, they're seeing an ostrich, and they're not seeing a dead one, perhaps, or anything. Oh, back to the lion thing, by the way. The lions, there used to be lions all over this area. Now they're telling you there's dangerous lions there, but there's still pockets of lions everywhere. And in fact, there were lions all across the north of Africa, and it's a different lion. It's the Barbary lion that they have, and there are lions that led all the way up into Sumeria. And you look at their ancient stuff, and they had lions back then when this whole land was covered with a lot more vegetation than it is now. And even in this time here, you can tell there was a lot more rainfall and vegetation perhaps than there is. Rivers, puddles, lakes that pretty much no longer exist and evaporated up. Here you see this delineated line. I don't know if it shows up in the video. It's just darker smudge going all the way across here. This is the delineation of the desert, and you can see there's cities right on the edge of the desert right as you go all the way through there. But there's a pass that goes through, and they can come on down through here. And this nowadays is literally the center of the Sahara Desert. They're showing you that there were 3 giant lakes that were there at one time. A little misconstruity, but there you go. And they're showing you here that down here in the land where it runs out, they even have trade places all the way up, all the way through here, which is telltale what they might have been using that type of thing for. But over and above that, they have Egypto. So they're saying this is all Egypt, and it's squared off to here, that this is the Libyan interior or exterior, this is the interior. And Ethiopia, sub-Ethiopia, is here. This is where Ethiopia is. Where it's not way out here by the Horn, it's way over here, where apparently Ethiopia moves. Well, apparently those people kind of move. You know, the people that are around in this area today aren't the people that used to be quite in this area, and there's a lot of admix in this area from the Islamic slave trade. Started about 300 or so AD, some 900 years before the Jewish slave trade started bringing the African native black people from sub-Saharan Africa across. And so that's where a lot of that comes from. And these are their trade routes and their runs of Spaniards during that day. Now, if we look at the other map here, you can see how they've updated it slightly. And the coast is drawn just a little bit better, but it's still flat as hell, right? The dragon is still there. The lion is still there. Everything is still the same. They've really left this alone. What they have done is to break up and show you where Libya Major is. They started drawing inside the line just a little bit and making it pink. And over here they did inside the line. But this is one of the first maps you see where you see how this is kind of shaded pink a little. This is kind of shaded yellow a little bit. They're trying to denote which areas are going, you know, which ones are done. And there's this Ham area that's right down into here, which is kind of telling where that Hamitic idea came from and where it led to. But yet Judea, still, this is the 1700s map, and it's still Ieudea, right? And if you look through here, these are the areas that are green all through here are areas that are very fertile and have all the plant life, and they're actually having these spill outs and the growth to them, and these are the areas that are contained with that. And they also show you small subcategories where Libya apparently are inhabiting these areas. Oh, I didn't show you it on the other one, but Osiris is written Osyrys, and this is where the sometimes Y comes in, where Y, as you can see, as it's written here in a lot of places, but then Libya is not written with a Y in a lot of places, and the America is not. In interior, a lot of words are Latinized, and a lot of the Y's are gone out of things. But Egypt, which could be Gipt, right? Any of these names could be, and a name like Cyrene could be Cirene or Sirene, like the sirens, right? And then ladies that were from over here that the Greeks had found. Now, one other little telling thing I want to show you about this map here is kind of odd and kind of really, really telling. When you look across the top here, in the Ptolemaic dynasty, they had it kind of centered over here. But now if you look at these numbers, I don't know if they're really showing up well. Let me try to zoom in just a hair more. You see 65, 64, 63, 62, 60, you know, comes on down. There's 50, right? So where do they have this starting at? That's kind of strange that they would have the numbers, but this is your longitude latitude numbers, and this longitude here is showing you that they have a higher number range, and it's running off the scale here. You know, 51, here's 50, 49, 48, and so on, right? So, oh, that was 56 right there. It looks odd, but there's 57, 56, 55, 54, 53, 52. Well, that's odd. You know what's even more odd about that? That if you extenuated the idea of how far this is versus how far this is and just averaged it, it would put where the zero meridian would be right across the north coast of North America. That's strange. How they would have a map that was from the 1300s redrawn here in the 1500s, early 1500s. 1492 they found America. Yeah, well, the early 1500s, there's those meridian things, 52, 53, 51, 52. This is taken from an earlier map. That earlier map was from the 1300s. That predates Columbus, yet it seems to be centered on that number over there, doesn't it? Kind of odd. Very telling, somewhat, for those inclined to be inquisitive towards such things. You look at the modern map here, though, and they've drawn the ostrich again, and everything is really drawn the same type of way. They even use the same deal. Now they've colored in this nautical marker in the compass. They've colored it in with its 4 colors, but other than that, it's really not changed much. And again, this was 1730. Let's see here. Can't quite pull it all in for y'all. Sorry. 1730. Language is written in Latin. It's the map dimensions are 55 by 46 centimeters. So it's a pretty decent sized little map. Now they had folded it in 2, but in the old times they would have been rolled up just like a pirate map, one of those larger pirate maps that are scrolled off or whatever, and done like that. Its description is, this lovely hand-painted polychrome map in Latin text is an 18th century or 1730 century painting of a 15th century map that was done from a vellum one from the 1300s. It has a fine example of a cartouche. Strangely, the word cartouche is the same word that they use for the iconography of pharaohs. Anyhow, it's the ornamental emblems surrounding the map title. These were particularly popular in the Baroque period. Also note the handsome drawing of animals, both real and imagined, including lions, ostriches, and dragons, and they left out the chameleon. They also want to note here that the previous map of Northeast Africa, there are rich details along the Mediterranean coast and the Egyptian Nile compared to the scant details of the interior, but those scant details do show you the Saharan route that they had. And they make a note that further to the south are the cataracts major, or the major cataract, which is now under the waters of Lake Nasser, created by the Aswan High Dam. But even though this map was originally conceived in the 15th century and drawn from the 13th century, the Nile is actually showing as having the large S turn, right? Marmarica as an ancient geography was a littoral area in ancient Libya located between Cyrenaica and Egypticus. It corresponds with what's now Libyan Egypt frontier, including the towns of Bamba, which is ancient Pythia, Timimi, which is ancient Pelurus, Tobruk, which is ancient Antipyrgus, Acroma, which is ancient Gania, and you can tell these names where they come from, Baridia, As Esalam, and Sidi Bari, which is ancient Zagra. The territory stretched far to the south, encompassing the Siwa Oasis, which at the time was known for its sanctuary to the deity Amun, and quite often the Egyptians would make a trek all the way out to this oasis and do ceremonies and stuff. And in fact, I've got to do a video on that and what its connection was. But Libya was considered as part of the African West Nile, more precisely west of the mouth of the Nile at Canopus. The Propolis of Skylax and Caranada names the Archimedidae as the first people of Libya, or Africa, these Caucasians. Marmarica proper was delimited towards the east of the escarpment of Catabathmus Magnus, now known as Abal el Kabir at Salem. The geographers of the Hellenistic period included Egypt in the continent of Asia, as I've told you before, and drew the boundary between Asia and Africa at that point, so far over the other side of the mountains, and Africa was not considered in Africa at that time. Now we've made our own delineations. This is the way the people believed it before. Under the Roman Empire, Marmarica, included in the Libicus Nomus, was located between the Cathabamus Bay of Pithynene, which is the Sinus Pithynines, or the cut-in harbor there. This area had formerly been considered part of Egypt. The city of Paratonium, also Ammonia, and which is modern Mursa Matruh. God, these names. Was the westernmost town of Egypt, for which reason it's together with Pelisium known as the Horns of Egypt. Another one, it cuts out over here, it cuts out over there. The delta was its mouth. Anyhow, about 10 stadia west of Praetorium was Apis, marking the border to the Libyan Nomos. So in Apis and the Apis bulls and so on. Menelaus Portus, near modern Ziwat Rubka, according to tradition, founded by Menelaus, was also known as the site of the death of Agesilaus. Now, the inhabitants of Marmarica were generally known as Marmuridae. Again, that hooks up to mermaids. And they are given the special names Archimidae and Gilgameh, which is very close to Gilgamesh and a little bit kin to Gilligan in the coastal districts, and of Nanosimones and Agilae in the interior. The Adrucamae are said to have differed considerable from the nomadic tribes of the country, strongly resembling the Egyptians. This would be your Berbers and your Amazigh and so on that run through, that apparently are more west than they are there. The territory south of the Libyan Nomos was inhabited by the Ammoni, centered on the celebrated and fertile oasis of Ammon and Siwa, showing there's a big connection between the Libyans and that area and Egypt. Anyhow, both Cyrenaica and Marmarica were included in the Diocese of Egypt in the 4th century, with the larger Praetorian prefecture of the east, while Tripolitania was the Praetorian prefecture of Italy. Now, this is from Cyrenaica and Marmarica in the Roman era, looking at it in 2nd century AD. That's what that was written about. And it was from 1907. The source is Africa Septentrionalis, and it was written by Samuel Butler and J.M. Dent, E.P. Dutton in 1907. But so they're telling you that the people out there looked more like the Caucasian Egyptians at the time. So just some look at the maps there, and all of the trade places that they had at the time. And strangely, a lot of these little buildings here have little domed and point tops onto them, which look much like cathedrals, and or the tops of Arabic buildings of the time, and Islamic buildings. And then again, we're talking about Islamic slave trade. Now, of course, the Islamic people invaded through and became the Moors, and those Caucasian Moors ran across from here at Gibraltar and into Spain. Now, people say they controlled Europe they controlled part of Spain for a good long time, but we are looking at a Spanish map from people that hail from the same concept or idea that has a connection because of that. Another thing I want to mention here in the video here on a parting thing, the Gibraltar. Well, there's Geb of Egypt, right? And then you hear about the giants, the Geborim, right? And if you think about the Pillar of Hercules and how they would push those apart, well, when you push those apart, it let in the ocean and flooded the Mediterranean. Is that the concept? Well, what if that's not really the Pillar of Hercules, but this Gibraltar that we still know about is the Gibor altar? That this was a homage to the giants of the land of those days. Now, were they 50-foot tall giants, or were these just people of well-renowned, or what connection do we have of that? The strange connection to Gibor altar and Geb altar has an odd connection too. Let me know what you think in the comments about the connections that are made there, the part of Ieudea, the strangeness of the map, the telltale signs that it shows here, dragons, all the things that it shows. But yeah, the longitude, latitude runs off, and it's not centered on this area of the world, is it? Strange. Like, share, and subscribe, guys. Enjoy. Peace.